The calendar mocked me from the kitchen wall. 7 days circled in bright red ink. 7 days away from Liam. 7 days away from our life, our routine, our quiet evenings spent curled on the couch, binging some ridiculous show. 7 days that felt like an eternity. Liam and I had been married for 2 blissful years. I say blissful with a touch of irony, because let's be honest, no marriage is perpetually perfect. We were happy, undeniably so, but we were also adjusting. Little things mostly. The way he left his socks strewn across the bedroom floor. My tendency to overspend on throw pillows that he swore all looked exactly the same. The ongoing debate about whether to get a dog. These were minor annoyances, the kind that any couple faces, but lately they'd felt magnified. A tiny pebble in my shoe, irritating me with every step. I chalked it up to the pressure of adulting. The mortgage, the careers, the looming question of children. We were both successful in our fields. Liam, a talented software engineer, and me, a marketing manager for a rapidly growing cosmetics company. It was my job at Bloom Cosmetics that was sending me away. An important conference in Chicago, a chance to network, learn about the latest industry trends, and hopefully impress my boss enough to earn that promotion I'd been eyeing. Liam was supportive, of course. He always was. "Go get 'em, Tiger," he'd said with a wink. But I couldn't shake the feeling that he was also relieved to have a week of peace and quiet. The morning I left, the air in our apartment felt heavy. We went through the motions. A quick breakfast, a hurried hug, a promise to call every night. But something felt off. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but there was a distance between us that hadn't been there before. "I'll miss you," I said, my voice sounding more hesitant than I intended. "I'll miss you too, babe," Liam replied, but his eyes were already glued to his phone. As the taxi pulled away from our building, I watched him disappear inside. A wave of loneliness washed over me, stronger than I expected. Maybe these 7 days apart wouldn't be so bad after all. Maybe a little distance was exactly what we needed. Chicago was a whirlwind of presentations, networking events, and overpriced cocktails. The conference was everything I'd hoped for: informative, engaging, and full of opportunities. I met influential people in the industry, learned about cutting-edge marketing strategies, and even got a few compliments on my presentation. My roommate for the week was Mark, a colleague from a different branch of Bloom. He was a few years older than me, charming, intelligent, and undeniably attractive. We'd met briefly at company events before, but this was the first time we'd had a chance to really get to know each other. Mark was easy to talk to. He had a dry wit and a genuine interest in my work. We spent our evenings debriefing about the conference, sharing our insights and frustrations. He listened intently, offering thoughtful advice and a sympathetic ear. He even made me laugh, something I realized I hadn't done much of lately. I called Liam every night, as promised, but our conversations felt stilted. He was busy with work, too, and seemed preoccupied. We exchanged pleasantries, made small talk about our days, but the connection was missing. It was as if we were talking from opposite ends of a long, echoing tunnel. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day at the conference, Mark and I decided to order room service and relax. We changed into comfortable clothes, me into a pair of leggings and a soft t-shirt, him into sweatpants and a hoodie. As I was changing in the small bathroom, humming along to the radio, I heard a knock on the door. "Just a sec," I called out, quickly pulling my shirt over my head. I stepped out of the bathroom and into the main hotel room area. The scene replays in my head like a broken record. Mark stood there, framed in the doorway between the room and the hallway. He held a bottle of wine in one hand, a corkscrew in the other. His eyes widened, and his jaw dropped slightly. I realized with a jolt that I was only wearing my bra and underwear. The air crackled with an awkward silence. I froze, feeling a blush creep up my neck. Mark looked mortified. "Oh my God, I am so sorry," he stammered, backing away. "I didn't realize you were changing." "It's okay," I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. I was just about to put something on." He averted his eyes, his face flushed. I'll just leave the wine here, and, I'll be in my room if you need anything. He quickly set the bottle on the table and retreated, closing the door behind him with a soft click. I stood there for a moment, catching my breath. My heart was pounding and my cheeks were burning. It had been a completely innocent mistake, but the image of Mark's surprised eyes was seared into my memory. I quickly threw on my t-shirt and sat down on the bed, trying to compose myself. What had just happened? It was just a glimpse, a brief accidental exposure, but it felt significant. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between us. The innocent camaraderie we'd shared had been tainted by a new layer of awareness, a subtle undercurrent of attraction. Later that evening, Mark knocked on the door again. I hesitated, then opened it a crack. "Hey," he said, his voice low. "I just wanted to apologize again. I feel terrible about what happened." "It's really okay," I said, trying to sound reassuring. "It was an accident." "Still," he said, "I feel like I violated your privacy. I would never do anything to make you uncomfortable." "I know," I said, my voice softening. "I believe you." He looked at me, his eyes searching. "So, we're good?" I nodded, offering him a small smile. "We're good." But we weren't really good. The incident had created a space between us, a space filled with unspoken thoughts and feelings. It was as if we were both tiptoeing around an invisible line, afraid to cross it, but also tempted by what lay on the other side. Over the next few days, Mark and I became closer. The initial awkwardness faded, replaced by a heightened awareness of each other. We found ourselves gravitating towards each other, seeking out opportunities to talk, to laugh, to connect. Our conversations became more personal, more intimate. We shared our insecurities, our vulnerabilities, our dreams for the future. I learned about his failed marriage, his struggles with self-doubt, his passion for photography. He learned about my doubts about my own career, my fears about motherhood, my longing for something more. One evening, after a particularly moving presentation about female empowerment in the workplace, Mark and I found ourselves walking along the Chicago Riverwalk. The city lights twinkled on the water, creating a romantic and magical atmosphere. We stopped at a quiet spot, overlooking the river. The air was cool, and a gentle breeze rustled through the trees. "That presentation really resonated with me," Mark said, his voice low. "It made me realize how important it is to support women in their careers." "Me too," I said, feeling a surge of emotion. "It's so important to have role models and mentors, people who believe in you and push you to be your best." He looked at me, his eyes filled with admiration. "You're one of those people for me, Ellie," he said. "You inspire me." His words touched me deeply. I had never felt so seen, so appreciated, so understood. I reached out and took his hand, my fingers interlacing with his. His touch sent a shiver down my spine. We stood there for a moment, hand in hand, gazing out at the city lights. The silence between us was comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding. Then he turned to me, his eyes searching. "Ellie," he said softly, "I know this is probably a bad idea, but I can't help but feel something for you." My heart skipped a beat. I knew this was coming. I had been feeling it too. A growing attraction, a magnetic pull that was becoming harder and harder to resist. I didn't say anything. I just looked at him, my eyes filled with a mixture of fear and desire. He took a step closer, his face inches from mine. "Can I kiss you?" he whispered. My mind was racing. This was wrong. I was married. I loved Liam. But in that moment, none of that seemed to matter. All I could think about was Mark, his warm breath on my skin, the longing in his eyes. I nodded, my voice caught in my throat. His lips met mine, and the world exploded. It was a kiss unlike any I had ever experienced. Passionate, intense, and full of longing. It was a kiss that erased all the doubts, all the fears, all the guilt. It was a kiss that made me feel alive again. We kissed for what felt like an eternity, lost in each other's arms. The city lights blurred around us, the sounds of the city fading into the background. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathless, our faces flushed. "I'm sorry," Mark said, his voice trembling. "I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have let you," I replied, my voice barely a whisper. We stood there for a moment, trying to regain our composure. The reality of what we had done was sinking in. We had crossed a line that could have devastating consequences. "What do we do now?" Mark asked, his eyes filled with concern. I didn't know. I was terrified, confused, and overwhelmed. I knew that I had to stop this before it went any further. "We go back to the hotel," I said, my voice firm, "and we forget this ever happened." He looked at me, his eyes filled with sadness. "Can we do that?" "We have to," I said, "for both our sakes." We walked back to the hotel in silence, the weight of our actions hanging heavy in the air. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The kiss replayed in my mind, over and over again. It had been amazing, intoxicating, but it had also been wrong. I loved Liam. I didn't want to hurt him. I knew that I had to tell him the truth as soon as I got home. The rest of the conference passed in a blur. Mark and I avoided each other, communicating only when necessary. The easy camaraderie we had shared was gone, replaced by a strained politeness. Finally, the day came for me to return home. As I packed my bags, I felt a sense of dread. How was I going to tell Liam what had happened? How would he react? Would he ever be able to forgive me? The flight home was long and agonizing. I replayed the events of the past week in my mind, trying to make sense of what had happened. I knew that I had made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but I couldn't understand why. Why had I allowed myself to get so close to Mark? Why had I kissed him? As the plane landed, I felt a surge of panic. I wanted to turn around, to run away, to escape the consequences of my actions. But I knew that I couldn't. I had to face Liam, tell him the truth, and accept whatever happened next. When I saw him waiting for me at the airport, my heart ached. He looked so happy, so relieved to see me. I wanted to run into his arms, to bury my face in his chest, to pretend that nothing had happened, but I couldn't. The guilt was too strong, the weight of my secret too heavy. We hugged, and I could feel his warmth, his familiar scent. It was like coming home after a long absence. But this time, home felt different. Home felt tainted. "I missed you so much," Liam said, his eyes shining. "I missed you too," I replied, my voice trembling. The drive home was filled with small talk. Liam told me about his week, about his work, about the things he'd done around the apartment. I listened, trying to act normal, but my mind was elsewhere. Finally, as we pulled into our parking spot, I knew that I couldn't wait any longer. I had to tell him. "Liam," I said, my voice serious, "there's something I need to tell you." He turned to me, his brow furrowed with concern. "What is it, babe? You look upset." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. I did something wrong in Chicago." His expression changed. The happiness faded from his eyes, replaced by a look of suspicion. "What do you mean?" I closed my eyes, bracing myself for the impact. I kissed Mark. The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel Liam's gaze burning into me, but I couldn't meet his eyes. "You, what?" he finally said, his voice barely a whisper. "I kissed Mark," I repeated, my voice trembling. "It only happened once, but—" I couldn't finish the sentence. The words stuck in my throat. Liam's face was ashen. He stared at me, his eyes filled with disbelief and pain. "How could you do that?" he asked, his voice rising. "How could you betray me like that?" "I don't know," I said, tears streaming down my face. "I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. I swear it didn't mean anything." "Didn't mean anything?" he scoffed. "You kissed another man. How can you say it didn't mean anything?" I didn't have an answer. I knew that my words sounded hollow, inadequate. Liam got out of the car, slamming the door behind him. I followed him inside, my heart pounding with fear. He paced back and forth in the living room, his hands running through his hair. "I can't believe this," he said, his voice shaking. "I thought we had something special. I thought we were happy." "We are happy," I said, my voice pleading. "This was just a stupid mistake. It won't happen again. I promise." "How can I ever trust you again?" he asked, his eyes filled with hurt. I didn't know. I had shattered his trust, and I didn't know how to fix it. "I love you, Liam," I said, my voice breaking. "I would do anything to make this right." He stopped pacing and looked at me, his eyes filled with sadness. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Ellie," he said. "I need some time to think." He turned and walked away, leaving me standing alone in the living room, surrounded by the ruins of my marriage. The next few days were a living hell. Liam was distant and cold. He barely spoke to me, and when he did, his words were sharp and cutting. I tried everything to make amends. I apologized repeatedly, cooked his favorite meals, offered to go to counseling. But nothing seemed to work. He was closed off, unreachable. I spent my days racked with guilt and anxiety, and my nights tossing and turning, unable to sleep. I knew that I had hurt Liam deeply, and I didn't know if our relationship could survive. One evening, as I was clearing the dinner table, Liam stopped me. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he said, his voice serious. My heart pounded in my chest. This was it. This was the moment when he would tell me that it was over. "I'm not going to lie, Ellie," he said. "I'm still angry. I'm still hurt. I don't know if I'll ever be able to completely forget what happened." My eyes filled with tears. I knew that I deserved his anger, but it still hurt to hear the words spoken aloud. "But," he continued, "I also know that I love you, and I don't want to lose you. We've built a life together, a life that I cherish, and I'm not ready to throw it away." Hope surged through me, filling me with a sense of relief and gratitude. "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I'm saying that I'm willing to try," he said. "I'm willing to work on this if you are." Tears streamed down my face, tears of relief and joy. "I am," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "I'll do anything." "It's not going to be easy," Liam said. "It's going to take time and a lot of effort. We're going to have to rebuild our trust, one brick at a time." "I know," I said. "I'm ready for that." And so we began the slow, painful process of healing. We started going to couples counseling, where we learned to communicate more effectively and to address the underlying issues that had contributed to my infidelity. We talked about my feelings of neglect, my longing for something more. We talked about Liam's preoccupation with work, his inability to express his emotions. We learned to listen to each other, to understand each other, to forgive each other. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, moments of doubt, and times when I thought we might not make it. But we kept working at it, day after day, week after week. Slowly but surely, our trust began to rebuild. We started spending more time together, doing things we enjoyed, hiking, cooking, going to the movies. We rediscovered the joy of each other's company. We also made a conscious effort to be more affectionate, more intimate. We held hands, kissed more often, and made time for sex. We remembered why we had fallen in love in the first place. It took a long time, but eventually, we started to feel like ourselves again. The shadow of my betrayal began to fade, replaced by a new sense of hope and possibility. One evening, as we were sitting on the couch, curled up together watching a movie, Liam turned to me and took my hand. "I love you, Ellie," he said, his eyes filled with warmth. "More than you know." "I love you too, Liam," I replied, my voice filled with gratitude. And in that moment, I knew that we had made it. We had survived the storm, and we had emerged stronger and more resilient. Our relationship would never be exactly the same, but it would be something even better, a relationship built on honesty, forgiveness, and a deeper understanding of each other. A few weeks later, I was cleaning out the storage closet, and I found a vase, an old antique vase that had been a wedding gift. It was beautiful, but it was also chipped and cracked. As I held the vase in my hands, I thought about my marriage. It had been beautiful, but it had also been broken. But like the vase, it could be repaired. I carefully placed the vase on a shelf, a symbol of our renewed commitment to each other. It was a reminder that even the most fragile things can be made whole again, with love, patience, and a willingness to forgive. Years have passed since that business trip to Chicago. Liam and I are still together, still working on our relationship, still learning and growing. We've had our ups and downs, our moments of joy and sorrow, but we've always managed to weather the storms. We even got a dog, a goofy golden retriever named Gus, who sheds everywhere and steals socks, but brings us endless joy. I still think about that kiss with Mark sometimes, and I still feel a pang of guilt, but I know that it was a turning point in my life, a painful reminder of the importance of honesty, communication, and commitment. And I know that in the end, my marriage is stronger because of it. We faced our demons, we learned from our mistakes, and we emerged with a deeper, more resilient love. The scar is still there, a faint reminder of the broken vase, but it is also a testament to the power of forgiveness and the enduring strength of the human spirit.